Hello, everyone, and welcome to this event, Business Without Anxiety. We are privileged today to have David Boddy as as our guest speaker, and I'm really curious to hear from him. I have attended events where he was the main speaker, and believe me, people still wanted more from him. It was a very short speech, and it was so powerful. And because this is aligned with our aim of business without anxiety, tackling general anxiety under high pressure, I requested David to be with us today, and he has kindly agreed. So, today, our purpose is to talk about the problems we have around stress, anxiety, overwhelm, and finally towards burnout. And there is a big space between stress and before it becomes mental health issues because there is a big gap where we try to do, DIY kind of situations. There is a stigma around it. People hesitate to talk, even in companies where they're saying we want to have well-being processes in place and people talk about well-being, there is still a hesitation. So we will look at that and some techniques and some results around it. It's all about sharing. We are not alone. If you would like to join us as a guest, or if you know someone who would like to join us as a guest, please go to this link on the screen or just mindly.uk on our website, and you can easily come as a guest speaker. We would love to hear your thoughts. Please comment below as much as possible. We are always open to hearing more questions. What we do is we try to not repeat the name of the person in the call so that it's a bit more safer. It's anonymous so that you can feel free to ask questions and your name is not in the recording. We'll take care of that when you're asking questions. If you see me looking down, I'm checking if there are questions coming constantly on a different screen. We're looking at a key issue involving business and anxiety, answer some submitted questions, answer some live questions, share some resources, and listen to David. Please note, this is not medical advice. Please, if you feel that you need help or if you know someone who needs help, it's a sign of strength to go and take help. And we are all here together. So put your own oxygen mask first. At Mindly, we follow the me approach. Initially, I used to call it the Mindly entrepreneur approach. And after talking to many entrepreneurs, people gave me a lot of um, full forms for this acronym ME. Motivated engagement. Entrepreneurs believe in action, so if we have motivated engagement, that's really helpful. ME stands for measurable efficiency. We need to measure what we are doing. If we're not measuring it, we don't know whether we are going the right way, the wrong way, or any way. For some of us, measurement can be money. For some of us, measurement can be in terms of time. For some of us, health, and many ways, but keep measuring. ME also stands for mind and emotion. But my most favorite one is ME stands for me, meaning change starts from me. If I have to see some change around me, I have to change myself to start with. Each of us, we have to start changing our own self. And that's my favorite about the me approach. In the UK, in England itself, 6% of people will be diagnosed with general anxiety, and this is from Mind. Over 8 million people are experiencing general anxiety. This is the most tolerated and ignored form of anxiety, even misunderstood because people confuse it with other things. It has physical symptoms that gets confused with other symptoms. People do DIY, do it yourself, but sometimes when things don't work, like when we are doing DIY for a furniture, it could be destroy it yourself if we are not careful, if we are not following the steps. And the unfortunate part is less than half of the people will take help, take formal help. And even for men, it's even less. They don't seek help, and there is a stigma. So let's talk a bit more. This is why we combine the business side of thing with the anxiety side of thing, the strategy side of thing with the well-being side of things. And this is where we combine Step It Up and Mindly. My name is Jeev Sahoo, Sahoo like Yahoo. I'm a dad. I'm an entrepreneur. I've worked in the corporate world for about 2.5 decades before running my own company for about half a decade, just about just about 6.5 years. But along this, I have seen ups and downs, both on the business side as well as on personal life. In personal life, something can happen. In my case, I had a bereavement. And what I thought was stress was something to do with the bereavement. I had not spoken to anybody about it. It did not even occur to me that I could talk about it. I was busy taking care of other people. When I spoke to someone, it gave me the courage about talking about childhood abuse and other things that have happened. And I found, especially during COVID, that even business owners, very senior people, they might have something that happened when they were a child, when they were in uni, when they were negotiating a contract or something, and that affects us. So if we can create that support network, that will be good. This is why I've created these kind of series where we can create this support and resources. Over to our special guest, David, who will introduce himself. I have a big introduction about David, but I felt that David is the best person to introduce himself because I can go on and we'll run out of time. So please, David, let us know about yourself, your journey, and why you love this topic. And right after that, we'll move to the main topic of the day.
Well, Jeev, thank you so much for your warm welcome today. I feel very honored and privileged to be with you and to be with your guests today. And if I can add a little dimension to this very important issue that we're discussing, I will be very pleased. I have quite a long story, which I'm not going to tell actually because it is too long. But basically, I began my professional life training as a journalist. I then spent a period of time in politics. Post politics, I entered into the business world, developed quite a considerably sized consultancy. Um, we had roughly 100 or so consultants working in different parts of the world. Managed to sell that business, which financially was very helpful. And then I could return to my first love, and my first love was the uplift of people through education. I became a headmaster. I also started a business supporting young graduates as they entered into the workspace. And now I work in a twofold way. I chair an educational company called Anglo Schools International, which works in international markets, particularly actually in India and the Middle East. And I also work as a business coach. Perhaps of interest to our viewers today is the fact that I have for very many years had an absolute fascination with the philosophy of the East.
Mhm.
And I've been very privileged to work with some great teachers from the East. I happen to hold the view that any knowledge that I might have and I might be able to pass on today has really come through experience and through the guidance of those teachers. So I'm not claiming anything that I'm telling you today. I hope I'm going to be something of a vehicle to help people as they navigate this really significant issue of stress and anxiety in the workplace.
Amazing. I'm really looking forward to that. In fact, the variety of experiences that you have is going to add to the stories because in a way, it's like traveling with you among in your journey, right? So it's really a privilege. In some of our previous talks, we talked about the myths around anxiety, how people misunderstand anxiety, some of the physical symptoms people see as stress, but at the same time, if you are feeling thirsty or sweating and so forth, it has gone physical to some extent. And there are about 18 symptoms we have talked in some other episodes. We spoke about remote working and does it really help? And today, let's dive into this topic, plugging in to your energy source well before you run out. And that's where David is going to talk for the next 10 minutes. Over to you, David.
I'll do my best, Jeev. Thank you. So the place to begin is an understanding, in my view, of the nature of the human being. And I've always perceived of the human being as being a fourfold creature. Now, interestingly enough, in the West, we often regard ourselves as a threefold creature. The four elements of the human being are clearly the physical dimension, very important, the mental dimension, the thinking processes and the reflecting processes, the emotional ground that moves us all into what we do and the way we react into certain situations. But the fourth dimension is the greatest one of all, and that is the fact that within and around each and every one of us is a purity of consciousness, a purity, if you like, of love and consciousness together. And this really is the divine source that each and every one of us could have recourse to if we know how to connect. Now, why is it important to connect before you run out of energy? Well, a little bit like taking a journey from London to Edinburgh, and particularly in an electric car, you're going to need to plan the points where you stop and plug in.
Definitely.
Well, so too with our lives, our business lives and our family lives. We need to identify both where we can plug in, how we can plug in, and the amount of time it will take in order to plug in before nature begins to take its course. Now, many people listening in today will have had the same experience as I've had over the last 40 or so years, which is that there are times of heightened stress and anxiety. And commonly, people look to the events outside of themselves as the source of that anxiety and that stress. I would like to propose today that we actually need to look within ourselves and deeply within ourselves in order to identify the real source of that stress and anxiety. Now, curiously and potentially paradoxically, that consciousness, that power of love, that power of movement that I was speaking of a few moments ago, is behind the stress, is giving it power.
Right.
And if we can find the way, as it were, to identify where the stress is actually coming from, then we've got the ability, mainly through our awareness, then we've got the ability to let that stress go and to dive back deeper into this more universal source of energy each and every one of us has. Now, if we're really honest with ourselves, during the course of the working day, we will find our minds moving in two directions, sometimes two directions, opposite directions simultaneously, which is noisy, internally noisy. But one direction, particularly for those of us in business, is we are always looking to the future. We are concerned about the future. We are in some way trying to shape the future. And our minds spend a lot of time in that direction. But it carries with it a curious fear, the fear of the future. Now, I've worked as a business coach with a large number of people who seem to be incredibly driven for success. But when we've analyzed the drive, when we've analyzed the sort of passion for this, on many an occasion, not always, but on many an occasion, what's actually being revealed is that there is a deep emotional movement in that third space. There's a deep emotional movement which is categorized in general terms as fear of failure.
Right.
Now, how ironic is that? that the passion for success can actually be driven mentally and emotionally by the fear of failure. And that fear sucks our energy considerably. And if we're not concerned and looking forward and thinking forward and all of those things, which we're
Right.
doing very mechanically, we will be oftentimes looking back at the past and regretting it.
That's the
I
other
should,
direction.
oh,
Yeah.
I should have done this now. I should have done this then. What a fool I was to have made that
Mm.
particular step or that particular investment. So our mental space is now extraordinarily occupied by this mental drift into the future, or this mental drift back to the past, fearing the future, anxious about the future, and regretting the past. So, what's the consequence of this? The consequence of
Hmm.
this is that we never stay present.
Present at the
We
middle, at
never
the now.
stay in the present moment. Now, there will be people
Mm.
listening to this today who are saying, well, of course, as a business, we've got a plan for the future. Now,
Hmm.
for the purposes of clarity, I'm not suggesting that businesses do not plan for the future. But what I am suggesting is that we become awake and aware as to the movements of our mind. So if you're consciously planning for the journey ahead, that's one
Hmm.
thing. But if the what I call the monkey mind in us, each and every one of us, that's the mind that darts from here to there and goes everywhere. If the monkey mind is just fearing around, well, what if this happens, or what if that happens, or oh gosh, I wish that didn't happen,
From a place of fear.
from the place of fear. And that is sucking our energy, sucking our energy, sucking our energy. And what happens is we don't really realize that we're running out of energy. And we will often only realize it when there is some medical or mental event occur
To tell us
to
that
tell
we
us.
have crossed the line. Yeah. In
Exactly.
fact, some people consider worry as what the brain considers worry as work because it's engaged. Monkey
Yes.
mind.
Yes. Well, there's another very interesting point about this, Chief, because
Hmm.
in the West, anyway, we talk a lot about the brain,
Hmm.
but the brain is the hardware. What's
Correct.
making it work is the mind, which is the software. Now, if I was to say to you, G, um, what is the size of your brain by comparison to the size of my brain, by comparison to the size of anybody's brain with us today on this call?
Hmm.
Well, they could put us on a slab and open us up, and they could haul it out, and they could hold it, and the surgeon could hold it in his hand, and say, "Look, what an amazing brain this guy's got!" Right? Actually, your brain, my brain, and Einstein's brain are pretty
Right.
much of exactly the same size. I'll be a bit fair, Einstein was a little bit bigger, but not that much. Okay,
Right.
and and so what was different between Einstein and you and I? What was different between an amazing leader and you and I? Huh? It's the way our mind functions. Now, the curious thing about the mind is nobody's ever seen the mind. No, you can't pull the mind out of the physical body and say, look at the size and shape of your mind. Look at the color of your mind. What have you been thinking about? No, you yourself can come to know your mind, and you have the power as a human being to witness the movements of your mind. But that itself requires an energy,
Right.
and the energy to witness, to become awake and aware, arises from the present moment.
That's powerful. We just saw a question that said, "How can we do it in practical life when we were busy?" Any
Yes.
suggestions?
Yeah. Well, As with anything, the more you practice, the better you get at it. Okay. So I always advocate to the people I'm working with as a coach to introduce in the daily life just some
Mm-hmm.
simple mindful practices. The best I've found is the practice of meditation.
Right.
Um, I work with a couple of processes of meditation. Um, One of them is just a very simple breathing exercise. Now, blessedly, God has given us the power of breath, and we breathe all day um,
Mm-hmm.
and all night,
Mm-hmm.
voluntarily and involuntarily. We breathe, okay. But if you just spend a little time attending to your breathing, breathing in, know that you're breathing in, breathing out, know that you're breathing out.
So
Follow
aware. We aware that we are breathing.
exactly. You become aware of the breath. Mm?
Right.
This has got a name. It's called pran chintan.
Mm-hmm.
Pran in the Eastern mythology is
Yeah.
energy, energy and breath and life.
Yeah.
And chintan means aware. So the
Yeah.
awareness of the breath.
Yeah.
And when you become aware of your breath, even just for a minute or two, the pattern of your breathing slows right down.
Correct. Yeah.
When your breath slows right down, the movement of your mind slows right down. Now you are coming back towards that present. Now you are not spending energy, you are saving energy. So
That's powerful. Yeah.
regular meditation and awareness of your breath are two of the best means that I have found. But
Mm-hmm.
in addition to that, another very practical approach is things like walking in nature mindfully. You can take 100 steps mindfully, 100 steps mindfully. And at the end of those 100 steps, you will have more energy than when you began. Yes, you've used energy in the physical realm, but you've saved by the mindfulness.
More of it. The
Energy.
leak has been saved. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
We
Um,
have yeah,
yes,
sorry.
I know you do.
Yeah, we have had a speaker who talked about when we become aware of our breath, the heart, the rhythm of the heart, which can be measured these days very easily with instruments, and the rhythm of the brain, they become coherent. And this is where, at the initial stage, when someone is singing or painting, when you go into the flow, your brain and your heart are in coherence.
Yes,
And when we are really stressed out, they're incoherent. And the ups and downs, it's not that they match it, but the ups and downs are matching. The brain has a different frequency, the heart has a different frequency, but when the ups and downs are matching,
yeah,
we go into that flow. And even whether it has not even less to do with meditation, but because even athletes, Olympians, swimmer, painters, singers,
they get in
uh,
the flow.
they, they go into that flow at that point, and that's when we get more energy because we are wasting less. That's why I use the word leak, because when we are stressed, it's like accelerating with the brakes on.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
so that's a beautiful analogy. Um, so those things, in some way, so long as you are awake to them, the possibilities
Hmm.
are very, very practical. Interestingly enough, also, and this is very much proposed in um, in the Eastern perspective of things,
Hmm.
what kind of food you eat is very
Correct.
related to your mental and emotional energy. Now, we often here in the West just think food is around the delivery of physical energy. No, it's around. It also impacts and affects the mental and emotional energy. Um, the kind of music you listen to. Some music is very agitating of the mind.
Mm.
Some music is very calming for the mind. All of these things, they're in the universe, you see. they're on the. I know I'm an old romantic, Jeev. I've been accused of being an old romantic for 40 years now, 50 years now. So I'm not too bothered by it. But the universe actually has all the energy you and I need, and anybody else needs, so long as we know how to tap into it.
Do you consider, and I'm just reading out a question and paraphrasing, even money is an energy there? Because as a business, we are creating value, which converts to money. And like time, time is part of when we are calmer, time flows differently. When we are stressed out, time flows differently.
Hmm.
How do you relate, and any tips to connect this frustration or instability with coherence, and use that for money, because businesses effectively measure that as well,
Money
or
very much.
mainly. Yeah.
Money very much itself is an energy, but it
Hmm.
can be a positive energy,
Hmm.
but it can also be a negative energy.
Okay.
How many very wealthy folk have you met
Hmm. Hmm.
who are not happy?
Hmm.
How many very wealthy folk have you met who, having spent considerable amount of time, years, maybe even half a lifetime or more, accumulating their wealth, then spend their time worrying about losing it?
Correct. Yeah.
So we need to have a different mental framework around money.
Hmm.
Um, there's a very beautiful, I think it's a beautiful law anyway, unfolded in the Dharma,
Hmm.
which is that um, you do not steal. Now, here, this
Hmm.
means you do not take more than you need.
Hmm.
Now, one person's need will be different from another person's need.
Hmm.
And there's no one saying that's wrong because you need too much of this or too much of that. No. Um, but you and yourself know how much you need. I mean, take Warren Buffett, for example, one of the
Hmm.
greatest investors in the world. He and Bill Gates together
Hmm.
give away billions. Nearly every year, they give away billions. I think the
Hmm.
last time I read, Warren Buffett had given away about 64 billion um, because he didn't need it. And he lived a simple and a humble life.
Hmm.
I think he still lives in the same house as he did before his Berkshire Hathaway company took off. And until very recently, anyway, was driving the same car and living with the same wife and all of those kinds of things. Just he didn't need it. So
Does
that
it also show peace? Because he is at a version of peace with that situation. Because if you are
exactly,
not at peace, then you're anxious or stressed out.
exactly so, exactly so. But the biggest practical issue, but I
Hmm.
have to I have to personally admit,
Hmm.
this is also the trickiest, is
Hmm.
to get what I call measure into our day. There
Tracking.
is a time for everything, but we usually exceed it. Now I have to hold my hands up to your audience here and say, look, I'm not an angel and I'm not perfect in this particular sphere at all. But a kind of, as it were, template to aim for is to spend 8 hours of your day working,
Hmm.
to spend 1 hour of your day in some kind of contemplative practice of some kind.
Hmm.
Could be meditating, could be praying, could be consciously breathing, could be walking in nature, could be listening to some beautiful music, could be reading some good literature. 1 hour of the day. Mm. So now we're down to 9 hours, right? So
Hmm.
far, still quite a bit of it to go.
Hmm.
Then to spend 3 hours
Hmm.
of the day um, in some activity which is nourishing. Now, the most nourishing activity is an activity which allows you to give your attention very finely. Mm? Um, I'm a terrible golfer, by the way, Jeev, but golf actually can be a kind of game where you have to give your attention, otherwise your ball flies off everywhere, and
You have to empty your mind at that moment.
you have to
I've
empty.
tried, I've tried that. Yes.
Yeah. Um, I do a bit of swimming, and I try not to be thinking while I'm swimming, but
Mm.
concentrating on my stroke. But it could be anything that anybody loves to do. Let them do it with attention, and don't tell my family this because I'm not very good at it either. Even if attend upon the washing up with
Correct.
attention,
Yeah. Yeah.
attend upon the polishing of your shoes with attention.
We have done some experiments. We call it the purpose control value framework. And this originally came from Viktor Frankl, who really survived compared to what he went through, our life is really a dream because he was in the concentration camps and so forth. And he mentioned about having a purpose in the action, having some version of control, which is can you do something about the situation and to see value in the situation.
Mm,
And this is where when we did the experiment and said, if you're feeling upset and you like sandwiches, can you go and make a sandwich? Or if you go for a drive, you actually focus because your brain is there are some chemical changes happening in the background. Your brain is focused in a small thing which has value. You're creating something, and this need not be the purpose. Need not be like finding the biggest answers of the universe. Purpose would be to create a sandwich. That's
mm,
all was the purpose. But within those 5 minutes, you took step one, you took step two, step three. You like the thing, or you put some sauce, and then that, etc., and you enjoyed it, or you created it for someone else to have it, and so forth,
mm.
and suddenly that heart and brain coherence has come back.
Yes,
So that
yes.
makes us feel energetic again. Amazing. And speaking of time, because you were talking about tracking, I'm looking, we are now just about 32 minutes. And I mean, time flies when we're talking on these topics, especially. So what I would do is I would try to conclude some of the things and let me bring back the slides. In fact, I won't go through the resource slide. We do have some slides about how well-being and anxiety is beneficial to companies, but these are very popular reports which you can Google. We can give you on Mindly website as well. You can look at some books, some apps which are completely free. Our apps have a tracker. So even if we see a video and we learn that I'm going to check this and that once a day, then you can just put a tick mark. And our job is to just keep the continuity of the tick mark. Um, if any of the audience are they really want their people to grow and they want to be presenting themselves as a caring company. We do well at work, no fluff workshop. The reason I say no fluff is always connecting it with action, their income statement, their customer ratings, their absenteeism, and so forth. And you can always book a 15-minute call to understand a bit more. So there are a lot of things available, and I will just close this here so that we can have David back. Um, Mainly because I felt, David, that 30 minutes for such an important topic, for a deep topic, is not at all enough. However, um it's a very deep start. People are taking time out of their work, out of their family time to listen to us. And where you took us, I was feeling that peace. I was feeling that calmness. I was feeling that coming back of energy. You know, when you said how to plug in while driving from London to Edinburgh, what a wonderful analogy. And that really helps us understand that before we start plugging other things, we need to take care of what's in between this here and from inside of us, not the hardware, the
Correct.
software.
That's it.
Amazing. Sincere thanks. Um,
Well,
and I think by public demand, we would request you to come back again for some of these discussions because we have a lot to ask and listen to.
well, I would be delighted. I've been very delighted to be with you today, and if I hope some of the things that have been said are of help to people, and I would be delighted to come back and continue the conversation, Jeev.
Amazing. We will be sharing the contact details, but if you can tell our audience where they can find you online and where they can see other workshops, coaching, and consulting that you do, please do share. Where can they
Yes.
find you?
Okay. So I think if they were to look at ASIS Business Coach, that's ASIS Business Coach, all one word, .com,
Yeah,
then people will be able to see a little bit about the coaching work that I do, and
brilliant.
what I've talked about today as some of the, as it were, inner secrets of that coaching work, and I've been happy to share them with you.
Oh, we are very curious to know some more inner secrets. I'm going to also write this in the description and in the comments so that people can easily find you. So please don't be surprised when people start asking you some more questions. But again, sincere thanks. And it was a real pleasure to have you with us, David. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.